This entire panel has to come off to make everything easier. Also, the cover underneath the steering column, which is held on by 2 bolts, that has to come off. The bezel that goes around the instrument cluster has to come off. That just pops off. Now, this instrument panel here, I've got it over here on the floor. Let's go look at that. Ouch. Okay. Along the bottom, it's got 4 bolts. Then you've got the 2 fasteners here, fastener there, 1 fastener up in the corner, okay, which is hard to see when it's in the general. This one, when you see it in the general, is actually backwards. So you have to go to the other side, and if you've got the subwoofer, you'll see it just under the subwoofer. Okay, so the fastener that looks like it's in backwards on the other side is right there. Here's your subwoofer. That's the very front part of your center console. It's just a pass-through, basically. I pulled this piece off over here, but I did not need to. I thought I did to get to that fastener that was in backwards. Okay, now they want you to run this with the factory harness if possible. Where the grommet comes through the firewall, it is not possible. So you run your wires down by the subwoofer, and then you go above, I guess you would call that the top part of your center console, down there, and then run them right through here. When you put this all back together, those will just stay in that tunnel area, because you can see right here there's a spot for them to go through that the center console does not touch. Okay, and then just run them down with your factory harness down this tunnel. You're going to also have to pull the center console out of the back, your glove compartment, cup holders, which that's held in by 2 more of these pins, just like that. Pop those 2 out, and then the whole thing will pop up and out. You don't even have to unplug the power outlet. You can just set it over in the seat. And then you can see, let's see here. This is the Super ATV harness, okay? Just laying there kind of floppy. So when we're all done, that's going to get zip tied to the factory harness. Now, I ran it over top of this big harness with the tape on it, because that comes over to your battery. And I just didn't want to go under it and get tangled in anything, so I went up over top. And then you're going to run it along the side closest to you, one of your intake tubes. The reason for that is, when you get back into the engine compartment, there is basically a tray, a heat shield that all your harnesses can run up through. It's kind of hard to see there, but you can see this metal heat shield looks like aluminum. So you run it up through there alongside, there you go, alongside your cylinder head, valve cover area. And that's where we ended up right now. Up front, under the hood, in the instructions from Super ATV, it says to cut a slot in this grommet. That is not needed. The grommet has a bunch of slots in it. It's made for wires to pass through, probably for factory turn signals or something. So anyway, right now I've just got the wires laying up here with my instructions, and as soon as I get done with it, get it all tied off, we'll update the video. Okay, so we've got our installation complete on the turn signals. So I'm just going to go and show you a few things here that I did and that I found along the way. Okay, this connector right here, this back side is the Super ATV part. This side right here is the factory wiring harness. The reason I'm showing you this is placement. I left the zip tie on there so it was easier for me to find. But right here, you're going to see this framework, and I've got it basically directly above the framework. The reason for that is, if you look right in this area here, it's wide open to the box. When I initially put it in, I had it right over here on the other side of this harness. When I did that, the box actually hit the connector. It didn't break it or anything, but it would make contact with it. Now, the harness itself, as I said before, you want to try and run that with the factory harness. So, this right here is for a license plate light if you have it, which I do not. So I just taped the ends of the wires, folded it over, and retaped them. This is the wiring harness that I was talking about. And as you can see, right down here is factory wiring harness. So I zip tied it to that, came back here alongside the head, and went down underneath the tube that runs to your belt case. From there, it runs right down in here. I zip tied it to the factory harness again. This is a heat shield right here for your belt case, but these all being wrapped in loom, and where they're located, they're not against anything hot, so that's going to work good. And then from there, the harness, which is right here, that's kind of hard to see, it runs up in front of that same tube, up to the front. I'm going to try and zoom in here. Right there in front of that tube, and then it goes into the tunnel, which is in the center of the vehicle. So once we get in here, now you can see the new harness real easy because it's the only thing that's not dirty. Right here, going down the center until we get up here, and then that's all I can show you from the back seat. But again, you can see the factory wiring harness that runs down through the middle that I zip tied it to. Now you don't have to get carried away with the zip ties, you don't have to try and crush it. You just want it so it's not flopping around everywhere. If your wires are flopping around, they have a good chance of rubbing through, and you're going to have a short. Okay, and here again is the Super ATV harness. Comes up here. I had a lot of excess. I'm sure this is somewhat of a universal kit. So all I did was take the excess, roll it up, put a zip tie around it. Again, this is not super tight. You don't want anything to do with wiring to be crushed. And it runs up and over. And this is where our side panel is going to go on this center console. So that'll all be covered. And where it's located, it goes up through that hole. Again, this is all going to be covered in here by that side panel. Okay. Then right up there at the top, you can kind of see the grommet. I can't even reach it from where I'm at, but that's the grommet it comes through. And if I back up here a little bit, that white tag is actually on the Super ATV harness that comes over to the flasher. I've got it wrapped in a Ziploc bag, which again I zip tied around the bottom to try and keep it somewhat watertight, just like they say in the instructions. The flasher to me looked like it was watertight itself, except for maybe the mounting bracket, but I wanted to follow their instructions. This is the Super ATV wiring harness that runs over and connects to the turn signal switch itself. Now, there's that plug-in. And that harness runs up the back side over into the back of the cluster. I'm going to try and show you that even though I've got the bezel back on. Let's see. Yeah, right there you can see it. With the bezel off, you can see it very well. I put the bezel back on already. And here's where it comes out of the turn signal switch. Now under the hood is probably the most important part that I wanted to show you, because it has to do with the wiring Okay, what we've got here is your wiring harness comes out just like they said. Now they wanted it up to about, well, they basically wanted this white sticker inside the cab. When I did that, I did not have enough reach to make me comfortable with the wires coming out to the turn signals. So I pulled it back through a little ways because I had all that excess and my wires still reached over to the turn signal switch. Now, the critical one is these two here, this orange and white. Okay, this is where your turn signals get their power. The white one, which is your ground, I hooked right up to a regular ground. This goes to the winch and everything on the front. This goes back directly to the battery. The terminal that came on here actually was a ring terminal. It was not big enough, so all I did was cut the ends to open it up a little bit and slide it over that stud. That one worked out great. Now this orange wire has to be hooked up to ignition or battery power that is activated when you turn on the ignition switch. The reason for that is if you hook that direct to battery power, like this positive post here, then what happens is your taillights stay on all the time. Because that's another neat feature I did not know about this kit until I got it installed. When you turn the key on now, the taillights automatically come on. So what I did was I found this orange wire that goes to this connector here, which is it's just a dead connector. It's not going to anything. I don't know exactly what it's for, but it was here. I tested all the wires. The orange wire had ignition power. The red and white was constant. So I hooked it to that orange wire. I use these spade connectors that I can actually take apart if I have to for some reason, and I left enough wire coming out of that connector that if sometime down the road I would need to use that connector, I can still hook it back up, okay? Right here at the base of these spades, that gray stuff is just silicone. I put that in just to seal it because we all know there's going to get water under here, and it'll just make it last a little longer before it does get corroded and fail. Now, up here, this is where I put my LEDs for the turn signals. If you look, you still have a really good angle. I mean, I've got to get quite a ways over here before I can't see one. So, and from the side, you're going to have plenty of view. I can't see there being any type of issue whatsoever with where I placed them. They want you to put it over here according to their instructions. I don't want to drill into the body, period. I mean, anything that's painted like that, this other plastic, not a big deal. They send you with enough lights to put 3 in each side. I just did 2, and here's my wiring. They plug right in, and they've actually got like a boot that seals the connectors, which is really nice. And then I just zip tied the wires down right here, and then I zip tied them together also so they're not just flopping around in here. Do not mess with this. Do not cut the wire. Don't even move it. Don't play with it. That is part of your GPS, which if you have ride command, you're definitely going to want that. So that being said, that was the basic installation of this. This kit is very nice. I can show you what it does when it's on. Okay, one thing that I also forgot to tell you about is the indicator light, which is right there.
Yes, paid for their testimonial.
That indicator light comes on, flashes along with your turn signals. I'm going to turn that on right now. Okay, now the instructions in Super ATV, they wanted it up high. They wanted it right here. I didn't want to put it there just because I didn't know how bright it would be, and if you're driving at night, it could, you know, be somewhat blinding. So I opted to put it down here, which is, it's still plenty bright. You're still going to be reminded that it's on. That was just my choice to do it like that. Okay, now return signals There, you can see that my left rear is working, right rear is working, and I'm going to show you these LEDs. They are very nice and bright. So I can't see there being an issue with not seeing those. So that completes the installation. The horn is the only thing I didn't go over. I don't know if your town or regulations want you to have that. If they do, all I did was drill a hole, mount mine under the hood, and plug the 2 wires in. I didn't use the bracket or anything. It's really not needed on this application. So anyway, leave me some comments. Leave me any questions you might have. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to help somebody.